Welcome back to my channel, and since you're all probably past level 30 on the battle pass, or at least getting the level 30 if you play a little more casually, I think that it's time to take a look at the new BP weapons and give my opinion on which one to get. Honestly, I haven't really taken a look at these weapons before this video because I did come from Japan when Fontaine released, so I was like really behind on all the Fontaine stuff, all the weapons, all the craftables. I haven't taken a look at the craftables yet. But anyway, short disclaimer, with these new BP weapons, we have to keep in mind that the old ones are of course still options, and some of them are still worth getting over the new ones if you don't have them yet. We also have to keep in mind that the BP costs money, of course. $10 or 560 pesos where I'm from. So I will put these new weapons up against the old Battle Pass weapons and some free and gacha 4 stars. It's still kinda weird to see 10 Battle Pass weapons now, but starting off with the new sword, this weapon has the same stats as the black sword, but comes with a way better passive in my opinion. It has increased skill and burst damage while giving you some extra crit rate, and this is generally going to be better than black sword for most characters, since the passive is a little more universal. For example, characters like Al-Haytham can utilize the wolf-fang because his mirrors do count as elemental skill damage, and this is the bulk of his damage in his rotations. Both characters like Keqing or Ayato, for example, would still rather have the black sword because they do use a lot of normal and charge attacks in their rotations. While both of these weapons are good for damage and will usually be good choices for your on-field damage dealers, Kagutsuru Beishin is a decent option for a lot of characters and it's free from Kazuha's story quest. Lion's Roar is super underrated in teams where you can take advantage of the passive, like in Melt Kaya or Reverse Melt Kaya Rosaria teams. The new fishing sword Fleuve-Sandra Ferryman? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Fleuve-Cendre Ferryman.
Yeah, that sword is really good for a free weapon. The only downside is you have to fish, which, you know, can be kinda... The new craftable Finale of the Deep is probably your go-to for free-to-play, and the Aminoma, which is the Inazuma craftable, can be good for low skill cooldown, high energy requirement characters. Next up is the Talking Stick. This comes with a higher base attack than the Serpent Spine, but it does come with a lower crit rate. The passive is pretty situational. Being inflicted by any of the elements isn't that hard, it's just that you have to bring those specific teammates all the time if you're using this weapon. Like Bennett, for example, for the attack bonus that you get from the first half of the passive. This weapon is kinda weird because the Serpent Spine is just the best claymore in the game, especially if you can refine it, because damage percent is really hard to beat. I know you do take more damage, but most of the time, if you have a shield or if you're like dodging, this is generally worth using. The craftable claymores are okay options, with the Tidal Shadow, which is the new Fontaine craftable, and the classic Prototype Archaic being my top picks. And if you have the other 4 stars like the Rain Slasher, it can be good for some characters like Fape Diluc, Thundering Fury, and Favonius will be good for supports. It just really depends on the character you're planning to use. But between these two, I think that the Serpent Spine is still probably your best choice. Sacrificial Jade is the new catalyst, and this one is interesting. The pros are that it has a higher crit stat than its direct competitor, the Solar Pearl, but the passive doesn't seem that useful for any of the characters we have right now. This gives a massive HP increase and some EM when the character is off-field for 5 seconds, and also some EM. This effect completely disappears, however, if you've been on the field for 10 seconds. It sounds like a pretty decent weapon. Characters like Yae can take advantage of both the crit on the stat and the passive EM, but the HP is completely useless. The catalyst will benefit characters that want to pop in, do their skill and burst, and leave the field, which if you think about it is almost every quickswap team, but it just feels weird to me as the HP stat is rendered pretty useless for most characters, except for maybe, I don't know, if you're playing like a Crit Komi or something. Maybe a future HP scaling character can take advantage of this, like a Yelan but catalyst, but for now I think stick to Solar Pearl if you want the catalyst from the battle pass. Other 4 stars like the Widsith, even with its RNG passive, is really good for most of the catalyst users if they want to do damage. And Favj and Sack are good for universal options if you have them. And of course TTDS exists if you're not really using the catalyst user for damage, but more of like for a setup like Mona, Barbara, Kokomi, Baishu. Characters like that. And for F2P options like no gacha, no battle pass, the Hakushin Ring is great in Electro teams, Prototype Amber is solid for an HP support stat stick, and Flowing Purity is a damage HP alternative. So far, the BP weapons in my opinion have been either side grades or even direct downgrades, but the Ballad of the Fjords, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, is actually really good. It comes with a lower crit rate than Deathmatch. If you guys don't know, Deathmatch is the highest crit rate you can get on a 4-star. I think 27.6 at level 90. But the passive gives a huge EM steroid instead of the attack that the Deathmatch provides. Granted, it's more conditional, requiring you to have 3 different elemental types. But if you want the EM from this passive anyway, you're going to have more than 3 elemental types most of the time. You're probably not running like some mono cryo Rosaria or mono pyro Xiangling if you want to use this weapon, right? This weapon looks really good on Hu Tao as a 4-star option. She often runs double Hydro or double Geo, so you fulfill that passive immediately, Hu Tao being the Pyro, Xingqiu Yalan Hydro, and then Zhongli as the Geo. Sino can use this really well for his Quick Bloom teams, often ran with either Fischl Beidou, Nahida, and the Xingqiu. Xiangling can utilize this weapon really well. In International, for example, in any of her teams, she can pretty much just use this weapon other than in Mono. I think it's a great option. But still keep in mind that the Dragon's Bane has also shown up on so many weapon banners, and if you pulled on any of those, there's a good chance you have it at a high refinement or even R5, even if you haven't been playing the game for too long. And the Deathmatch is still a really solid option for the characters that don't care for the EM as much as the attack. For example, like Xiao. And also, Favge exists if you have that. And the catch, even if you have the fish for it, is a secret 5-star weapon. Lastly, the Scion of a Blazing Sun is a high base attack, low crit rate weapon. I saved this for last because I think it looks the coolest out of the new Battle Pass weapons. And the passive is made for charge attack damage dealers. It also gets bonus points for again being the coolest looking weapon I think I've seen for a 4-star. The Viridescent Hunt's passive is subjective, like the value is subjective depending on who you're using. And on the current Abyss, if there are multiple enemies, it gains a little more value, but on bosses, it's basically useless. And for characters like Child, I think that the Viridescent Hunt is still probably the better choice. Like, I'm not saying that the damage is better, I'm saying that the CC is more valuable for characters like that, because like, for example, if they kind of spread apart and you don't have proper grouping, then this passive will come in clutch most of the time. And I guess in turn give you more DPS because you're doing like more Riptides. I think both are good, but the Viridescent Hunt is more subjective. I think this is just more consistent. But for other carries like Lini, Ganyu, and Tignari, charge attack carries, I would go with the Scion. I'm not so sure how this compares to the Prototype Crescent, especially the R5, but that weapon does need you to hit a weak spot or like a headshot to get the passive. And it gives attack percent instead of damage percent. The Hamayumi and the King's Squire are also great craftable options. That's it for my opinion on the new Battle Pass weapons. I think for my first one, I'm probably gonna get this because I have a bias for that. I just want to I just want to have it or this for Xiangling because I want to test it out. But anyway, I wish they really gave us crit damage weapons this time around. It's just a small complaint since every old generation Battle Pass weapon has had crit rate. It would have been nice to see that crit damage this time, but I guess we do have like the Black Glyph weapons for that purpose. It is what it is. I think that the Battle Pass weapons in theory should be universal weapons, and to be fair to Hoyoverse, for the most part they are. I just hope to see more accessible weapons that can potentially buff your team, like the Sumeru Craftables. I think that was a cool gimmick that most of them had, like it dropped a leaf and then you pick it up, you get EM. Hopefully we see more of those in the future. But that's it for me. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time, or I'll see you guys on Twitch if you guys twitch.tv/Smitty. Bye bye.